Welcome to the Primal Alternative podcast, featuring actionable tips from real people with real stories about real food. This show is presented by Primal health coach Helen Marshall, who empowers other paleo-loving, Thermomix-owning mums to start a sustainable, faff-free business of their own with the Primalista license. The Primalista license brings primal alternatives to the foods we love to our communities, making primal living more doable with less falling off the wagon. The Primalista license is available at www.primalalternative.com. And now, introducing your host, Helen Marshall.
Welcome, Fouad. I'm so grateful that you are joining me for take 2 of your interview.
Your face just went red when you said that. I love it.
I am literally mortified that we had an amazing hour-and-a-half conversation and it was to an audience of 1.
Well, we're not going to be able to repeat that conversation, so let's not have high hopes for this one. I think this is going to be downhill from there.
This one's going to be 20 minutes or something like that.
Let's talk about the weather. How's the weather?
It's really hot here, actually. How is it where you are?
We've had a few rainy days and it's clearing up now, so it's good. Starting to be able to go back outside into the bush and having a bit of walking around this area and discovering it. So really, really wonderful.
Nice. Very nice. Now, Fouad, I'd like you to share your story of how you discovered the paleo diet.
Sure. Okay. So I guess I share my story for a few reasons. One, of course, is to give your audience a bit of background about who I am. The other one is to give them an idea of how different a life could be, like someone that they could be walking down the street with and they don't know that person, and just to give them an idea of how different a life could be. Also to hopefully see some commonality between their story and mine. Also to inspire them to see where I've been and where I've ended up, and just to give them a little bit of motivation so that they know that if they have a certain amount of determination in them, even if it's small, they can really allow it to grow and change their life. And my story is one that I'm very grateful for. I've been through a lot of sickness in my life and I've been able to reverse it. And I've come out the other end preaching to people that this is possible and telling them that, through changing the way that you eat, firstly, you'll be able to transform yourself and your life, reverse chronic illness, and be a much happier person. Because after all, I think this is, a pursuit of happiness that we're all on at the moment. Everyone here is looking to be happy. And I guess what I try to share is my version of how I came to that. So I was sorry about the long intro, but just to set the scene and give people like a little bit of an idea of what they should be looking out for here, because I like to be clear on these things. So I was born in Lebanon in the peak of the civil war. This was a very, very difficult time. The Lebanese people were fighting between each other, Christians versus Muslims, and Christians versus Christians, and Muslims versus Muslims, and Palestinians and Israelis, and all sorts of foreign influence in the country, and it was just crazy, crazy times. And I was born in that crazy time. So typically someone who grows up in Lebanon will get the best of both worlds, the country being a Mediterranean and Middle Eastern country, so we get all these amazing spices and the beautiful ancient historical foods that we've had, plus all the fresh stuff from the Mediterranean. And that was to a certain extent my diet, but Lebanon was receiving a lot of foreign aid during the time of war, so the staples were the stuff that were coming into the country, things like white sugar, white flour, vegetable oils, vegetarian ghee, non-dairy ghee, which is like a different type of margarine. I don't know what it is. Ultra pasteurized cheese, spam. And it was really like a
Not spam.
A lot of spam.
Oh no.
A lot of spam. Yeah. And we used to fry eggs with spam. That was sort of like a typical breakfast for us, and eat it with lots of high gluten Lebanese bread. So this was sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Is this something you can pause and sort of cut out the sneeze, or does it have to go on air?
It's going to be an on-air sneeze.
All right. Well, it's gone now. I think, once you
stage fright.
I think when you recognize that there's a problem, that's the first thing that happens in resolving it, isn't it? So the sneeze is gone.
Yeah, wow.
And
just from your awareness, amazing.
That's it. Bring awareness to the problem. And so I'm. There I am, I started sneezing at an early age.
Yeah, me
mind
too.
you.
That's terrible.
Yeah, really?
Fever.
Yeah, okay. Hay fever.
Yeah.
So this isn't hay fever. We just, this is just like, I sneeze once every couple of days now, which is really good.
That's okay.
But I'm keeping a logbook. But, all right. So, hey, this is nice, this video thing. The first time I do a video, and it's a bit more personal, isn't it, to talk to someone on camera?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, like there's something really good about watching someone's expression when you're talking to them to find out if you're actually...
Yeah.
There, they're going. Oh, they're going.
Yes. But is he being serious or is he
exactly.
okay, joking? Does he really keep a sneeze logbook? All right. So
I don't think he does.
So
anyway, sorry.
No.
Okay, back to the horrible story.
So back to the story. So here I am. I'm just growing up in this stressful environment. I'm getting a lot of stress, a lot of refined foods, and on top of that, the Lebanese doctors were giving antibiotics like they were candy because they were worried that if you went to a hospital, that's like a prime bombing target. So they wanted you to stay away from that. So the first, like, if you had a headache, they'd throw antibiotics at you. It was that kind of problematic. So I was born into this kind of environment. My mom was stressed out during gestation, and here I am struggling with my own health from a very early age. So, an overweight baby. And by the time I'm 13, I'm obese already. I have chronic hay fever. I have a blocked nose all the time. And hold on, this sneeze is like.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna tell you about this. I'll be back.
Okay.
Maybe you can post this or something. Just give me a sec.
Were you just writing that in your sneeze log?
Well, no, I see. This is a good trick, actually. Every time, I sneeze, I realize that it's usually because something, like some dust or something, has gone in and started thickening my nose. So you can just sniff a little bit of water, and then it goes away. It just goes away.
Perfect.
So hopefully that does it.
Good tip.
Thank you. $5, please. I'm gonna charge you for it. But here I am, sick, 13 years old. I'm starting to get these recurring ear infections. Really, really vicious. Very painful. I'd lose hearing in both ears, and the doctor would have to drain my ears from the pus. And I was put on antibiotic injections for 6 months on, 6 months off for 3 years, which completely destroyed my microbiome, which is the bacterial colonies that are inside your gut and on your skin, of course. And they outnumber us 10 to 1 in their DNA. So as far as numbers go, we're a vehicle for microbes in this human form. And they do a lot of things, like they modulate our immune system, they keep us healthy, they synthesize vitamins for us, they digest our food for us, and they also fight invading bacteria as well. So they're part of this immune system, and they relay things like hunger signals to the brain. They control our mood. Incredible what these bugs in us actually, how far dependent we are on them to be who we are. So I'm on these antibiotics, and they're wiping out the good with the bad. There's like a little, extermination going on in my body. And by the time I'm 17, the ear infections had sort of become a bit less frequent, because I was starting to use a natural remedy for them, which was basically like roasted onion juice, and that kind of kept the problem away. And that was incredible, actually. The first application of that really helped me so much, and I was able to stop the antibiotics after 3 years. But it took that long for the antibiotics to be stopped. And then by the time I was 17, I started getting this acne that started off on my head. I had a lot of hair back then, and so it was covered under the hair, and then it spread down my shoulders, my back, my chest, my legs, covered my whole body, and it was really, really like massive. Like I have pimples this big, full of pus, and the doctors, as I said last time to you, I think they thought I had an antibiotic deficiency. So they're like, I know what this guy needs, more antibiotics. He's just born with not enough antibiotics in his system, and I think we should just top him off. So no one knew the wiser. No one knew that this was bad for us, and they just kept pumping it down my throat in pill form this time. Definitely the acne would subside when I would take it, and then definitely it would come back worse and worse with every application. And that's the way it was. I moved to Australia in 2001. I was studying software engineering here. The doctors here did the same thing. I saw so many specialists. They all told me the exact same thing, that this was a problem that I had from birth, manifesting at a later age, that as such it is a genetic issue, and I had just lost the lottery, in that sense, and I'm going to have to continue to medicate for the rest of my life. Well, I thought the same too. So I would have to cycle the antibiotics. I couldn't take them all the time, so I had to go on them. And I was, I think 23, 24. I can't really remember the age actually, but I started getting eczema that covered me from my chest down to my legs, really itchy. So here I am, full of pus and scratching until I'm bleeding. Like, agony. I'll give you a second maybe to sort of get that image out of your head if you want, and we can move on. So more antibiotics, and now steroid creams on my skin, which has thickened my skin. It's changed the quality of it over the years. Still struggling from residual issues from the medication. I'm still struggling now from that. I believe I've resolved a lot of the issues that were related to my lifestyle, but my body hasn't recovered from the impact of the medication, which is, a big thing that I continually try to improve on. But I'm going on with my life. I'm working as an IT guy, and I wanted to sort of express a little bit about my culture. So I started writing this blog in 2006 called The Food Blog. I was doing a degree in English literature before I did software engineering, so I really liked writing and self-expression. And so I started this blog about food, particularly Lebanese food, to talk about our culture and our ways of living through the lens of food, to talk to people about what being Lebanese really meant for me. Because I'd meet a lot of people in Australia who go, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'd say, "I'm Lebanese." They go, "You're Lebanese? Well, you don't seem very Lebanese to me." And I think they had this kind of impression in their head of what a Lebanese person would be like, the Subaru WRX and the undercuts and, that kind of stuff. And, "Whoa, bro, what's up?" And I didn't have any of those finer qualities of being a Lebanese person, evidently. So I was kind of battling that stereotype wherever I went. It wasn't uncommon for me to have this conversation with most new people that I met in my life, to be like, Lebanese, most Lebanese people I know aren't like you, or some of them had never met Lebanese people. So I wanted to change that perception. So I'm writing about my culture and all that. So I really started falling in love with food through this, because I liked eating and I liked writing about it. So I started learning more and more about things like food culture and history and food migration, where a dish that started off in Iran ended up in Peru. Things like that really fascinated me, and I threw myself at it. And then the Sydney Morning Herald came and saw my blog, and they liked my writing, and they asked me to be a reviewer for the Good Food Guide. So here I am, like a software engineer by day and a food critic by night, going to all these restaurants, going, this is delicious. I'll be a chef's hat for you, like that. So that was pretty fun. And I got to travel around New South Wales doing this, and to be able to really understand what the chefs were doing, and to be honest in my assessment of their food, I had to learn more and continue to educate myself around food, because I didn't feel right to judge something that I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. So I got so many books on food and started reading them, and learned more and more and more about that. And I started changing my worldview. That kind of knowledge shifted my paradigm. I started learning words I hadn't really registered before, things like sustainability, seasonality, locality, the importance of soil health, importance of supporting your farmers, the dangers of genetic modification, pesticide use, and all these things started getting absorbed into me and changing my perspective around food. So I started shopping at farmers markets more often and getting, the best stuff that I could get to cook at home. But at the same time, I was still eating out, like in McDonald's every once in a while, Hungry Jacks and things like that. I didn't really understand why eating at those places was bad for me. I was like, it's okay. And now I know why, that it's there's just so many reasons why you should be avoiding those types of industrialized food places. So my health journey continued to become worse over time. I would yo-yo diet, so I would lose a lot of weight through severe calorie restriction and then put it back on with a vengeance afterwards. And I peaked at 128 kilos in 2011. This was when my daughter was 1 year old. And I wanted to be able to keep up with her, but I just couldn't physically do it. I was just so burdened by my own weight, a lot of pain and inflammation and heaviness and sluggishness and laziness and lying on the sofa and not really having mental clarity to be able to just have a conversation or get a sentence out even. And that was really where I was, living in this kind of fog. And it was a lifelong fog. It's not something that, was new to me, but it had just become really kind of difficult to live with at that time. And I decided, hey, I went to see the doctor one last specialist that I was told was going to be able to help me out with my skin. I went and saw them, and they said exactly the same thing about my skin, that this is something I'm going to have to continue to medicate for the rest of my life. They had to authorize the most powerful antibiotic they could. They couldn't actually script it themselves. They had to call in and get an authority to provide me with that. And that was after 3 minutes of them looking at my skin and did not ask me a question about my history, the way I ate, my lifestyle, nothing.
So this, like double dose of like mega antibiotic came on the back of about a decade of taking antibiotics. Anyway,
so the one that he gave me, I didn't take. I took that script and I threw it in the bin. Good. And I said that's it. That I can't go down that path. I have to find a different way. And I started going to naturopaths and things like that, but no one was able to help me. No one really. Some people had good ideas about health, and they gave me diets to follow, but I think it hadn't registered with me why they were giving me that way. I didn't get the education.
Yes.
So I'm the kind of person who only can make change when it resonates on the inside. I can't follow orders. And I think a lot of people are like that. They can't just create change just because someone tells them to.
Yeah.
It has to come. Yeah?
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I think you need to
understand yourself.
Yeah, and you need to understand why, and you need to understand, once you understand how these foods affect your body, then it can be a lot easier to pass on those foods, can't it? And to go and find alternatives that can replace them.
And I think naturopaths try to help us. Some of them have good ideas on diet, some of them don't. But I think there's a lot of initial resistance because there's change that we don't want to change. We don't want to do it. So
what is that? Let's just touch on that for a minute, because my 10-year-old son said the other day, we were talking about food allergies, and I said you can have some food allergy testing done. You can get some blood drawn and have an IgG antibody test, and you can find out all these different things that you're allergic to. And he said, I'd like to know, because it's almost kind of like you're unusual if you don't have a food allergy these days at school, right? So, and he said to me, even if I'm allergic to gluten, I'm still going to eat it anyway. And I was just like, wow, what is this resistance to, why do we want to embrace our poisons?
So this is a very well documented psychological thing in us, that not only do we not want to improve, but like by restricting ourselves, or even something that sounds negative could be understandable why we don't want to do it. But sometimes even great things we don't want to move towards. We like to be in a certain definition of the self. So we like to define ourselves as very solid, because we've been kind of given this idea from childhood that as you grow into this body, you're given an egoic identity, and that egoic identity anchors itself to certain belief systems and identifies itself around those belief systems. And in truth, you're none of these belief systems, because they're actually quite fluid, and you just experience resistance at the egoic level as it wants to shift from one thing to the other, because through the shift it exposes how fragile this identity is. Because you go, well, yesterday I was this guy, today I'm that guy. Well, who am I really between those two shifts? And this is at a very subconscious level. This is a very primal level for a human being. But this is, I think, where a lot of the inner work of a human being starts happening, is when they become conscious of these running programs that tell them, eat this way, behave this way, think this way, talk to people this way, feel that way. And once they recognize that these are actually almost like operating systems that have, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I recognized the other day that I've inherited the sensation or the feeling or the attitude of worrying about stuff. That actually, when someone presents me with a problem, I worry about it, and then I go, and I feel an internal kind of worry. Simple, it's really simple. And then I have to take action from that place of worry. And then I realize that this is actually something that my environment had sort of taught me to behave in that way, and that I don't actually need to behave in that way when a problem presents itself, because in any case I'm going to have to take action. So whether I take on that worry and accept it as being a feeling that's inside me, that's running my internal milieu, for a lack of a better word, then it's not something that I need to grab onto. So then this person who's always been worrying all this time, like I have, I recognize this and I start being able to change it, because now as the worry pattern starts coming up again and again for me, I can just go, this is the old behavior, which is the identity of the person who worries when a problem comes and presents themselves, and I don't need to be that person. And then you're more fluid with who you are, and you don't have to anchor yourself on all these different belief systems, and then you can flow with life a little bit more easily. But this kind of rigidity is from an early age instilled in us, because it builds certain things in us that allow us to conform with our larger society. Mm-hmm. So it becomes part of our mythology to be rigid, to follow like everyone's eating gluten, everyone's eating at McDonald's, everyone is consuming, everyone's buying the latest phone, everyone's doing, so these things, this is the mythology of our world. We're born into that mythology and we conform with it because that's how we are trained. But this is just the first level of consciousness.
Yes.
And then the second level is when you're aware that you can let go of all these trainings that you've had. They've gotten you so far to be able to survive in this world and not just be, a child that has no objectives or goals or anything like that. But you've come to a place where you're intelligent, you're capable of making the correct decisions that are also conscious of the internal programming that you have. So as far as your child goes, it's a normal part of his development, but there will come a time in his life when he'll be able to look at those things and say, well, actually, do I really feel that way about gluten, or what is the attitude that I have? Have I just inherited this view? Does it associate, do I associate with it things like comfort, love? Do I associate conformity with my friends and not being someone who stands out? All these emotions that can be around bread.
I know.
Like something so,
I love
all
it.
these things. Yeah. So they'll be able to get over it as they mature. But for now, this is just part of their forming of that egoic self-identity. I think your job as a parent is to sort of guide them to have the least amount of weight that they carry with them as they move on to that the second level where they can drop these things anywhere. Yes. So you don't burden them with as much as possible. So they can you're going to give them a lot of emotional scarring just by being, around them anyway, because you've inherited a lot of stuff.
Well, that's right.
Yourself that you're still working with.
And it does pass on down. Yeah. I love how you've described that, and I'm really surprised that I didn't make the connection. But at this age, trying to fit in at a regular state school, it's all about fitting in with the tribe of the school, and really that's the most basic primal thing that we can do, because if we didn't fit in with the tribe, then we'd face death and isolation and we'd starve. So it's really important to conform and to fit in. But like you say, when you could take to the next level, it really is a case of have you read Gay Hendricks' The Big Leap? And he talks about, it's really good. He talks about how you get to a certain level and then you hit your upper limit, and how you have to transcend that upper limit. And really that's as simple as becoming aware of it, and then, noticing behaviors like you are noticing behaviors about your worrying. And when you start on a health journey, and this is why your book's title is so apt. It starts with food, but it changes your whole life, because once you start to, get rid of that fog that you've described and all of that pain that you were in, and you start to heal and to gain clarity, you start to become so much more aware of your consciousness, aware of your guide, your intuition, don't you? It's like this whole life transformation, which is incredible.
That's exactly been my experience, and that's really in part why I do what I do. Partially, the development of the human being is incredibly important to me, to see our society change and to see people become less automatic and more conscious of their actions. But also, I believe that we live in a society that is sick as a single organism, and that we're trying to heal one person at a time through allopathic medicine or homeopathic or natural medicine, whatever it is. It's one person at a time. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough to change the state of the societal organism. We can't keep creating more and more sick people. They're outnumbering the healthy people. And if we just, trying to fix every sick person one at a time, it's problematic for us.
Just thinking about it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think what I like to do is I like to not only fix people through the way that, their body manifests health, but also to give them a solid understanding of what health looks like on the inside, so that when they catch on to that, when they're there, they just start infecting everyone with health, like everyone around them, like inadvertently starts wanting to be healthy and to move healthy and to feel like, oh, actually, look, I'm very limited in the way that I'm living my life, both in my physical body and my diseases and all that kind of stuff, and also in my perspective. And like, why do I self-impose all these limits on what I see and what I do? Why is that even necessary? Why can't I actually grow outside of this tight boundary of who I've defined myself to be and just really find happiness? Do I have to conform? Do I have to stay within these default programs that our society has given us? Because look where we go as a society. Look where our programming is taking us. I mean, we're so advanced in terms of our technology, but here it is, the year 2017, and I have to stand on a stage to tell people what is food and what is poison. Like, how is that even something that is ever a job? Like if I was born 100 years ago, I wouldn't have to do this. But here we are.
You'd be the crazy one, eh? You'd be like, who's the crazy guy? We already know this stuff because it's being passed down from generation to generation to generation. But in my job as a health coach, I'm talking to women about how to understand when they're hungry or not. Because I know we touched a little bit on this last time, but nobody else listened to that, so let's go through it again. But we've got that. we've had not only the refined foods that you've talked about, but this social conditioning, which I guess is a hangover from the Great Depression and the wars, where food was scarce, and we've been taught to clear our plates, and you're not going to get dessert unless you eat all of that first. So we're switching off all of our hunger signals, and it's a big mess. So tell us, like, I love your theory about not just focusing on the individual, but to be looking at it, as more of a collective, and to think more societal than just in ourselves. So what are some things that we can actually do to help that? How do we do it?
It starts, of course, from yourself. You work on yourself to become healthier, and let's say talking about women and hunger and things like that. Just changing that scarcity model to one of abundance, changing the self-hatred to one of self-love. Being compassionate to yourself, accepting where you are and starting from there, not having to look forward to immediate change, but to think of it as a lifelong journey, and to think of the generations to come as a bigger priority than yourself. That gets you out of that selfish individual model that we've been put in now in this world, and we start thinking about our human family. And it sounds really grand, but it's really simple. It's not, it is what it is, really. Like we are the human race living on this planet Earth, and if we can come to a time where we're all actually peaceful and loving, and we are not damaging the planet, and we're living sustainably, then wouldn't that be amazing? Like how beautiful would it be? Often get glimpses of how beautiful it would be, but sometimes I don't even dare imagine it because it seems just too beautiful to imagine. We start with ourselves. Like, that's the only person you can change is yourself. But the other day this sentence came to me, and I haven't formed it really well, but I had this idea of taking action towards peace, and I thought that you can't take action towards peace. You have to find peace and then take action. This is where I find the human being's next move is to look inside, come to terms with their inner self, their peace, because there is a place inside you that is incredibly peaceful if you know where to look. Mm-hmm. And it's always been peaceful, and it doesn't actually get troubled by all these things that you worry about. And it's an incredibly light place of being, and if you find that place in you and you kind of marinate in it, if you want, then your actions just become more naturally peaceful, and whatever it is that your life becomes the fruit of that peace will just contribute to a better world. So I don't think you can predict where you're going to go. You can't be rigid about your path, but just from being in that kind of harmony, then you harmonize with life, and then things change from there. And it's a great place to be in harmony.
It is, and I've always thought the war on war and the war on terrorism, it's like fighting fire with fire, isn't it? It's like, well, how's that going to work? Because it's just giving more energy to the thing that we're trying to get rid of. So if we can all concentrate on, you can make a lot of change, like you're saying yourself, and focus on being peaceful ourselves and being the change that we want to see in the rest of the world. It's a very powerful place to be. We all feel so disempowered. We're all waiting for politicians to make positive change for the planet and society, but really, you can do so much.
Well, I don't know. I find politicians to be the creme de la creme of the crooks. Like that's how they got to be where they are. Like they're the finest. They're our finest. So, and to actually, people who've been very, very successful at business, and people who, they're very good at being part of an elite and things like that. Like, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not at all. I'm actually not interested in politics at all, because I see it so much in bed with the large industries like, big tobacco, big pharma, big agri, big food. So all these interests are represented within the political system, and they have much more say than we do in that political system. But for us, we change the world at a grassroots level. We support the farmer who's making the food down the road, because we don't need the politician to tell us to do that. And that creates change. And it's so simple. It really is so simple. And eventually, you create more demand, and as the demand grows, then the supply has to grow. And as the supply grows, the system changes. And I feel it in the world at the moment. There's a shift in the way the system is happening. And this is like an energetic shift that's going on in the world at the moment. And regardless of what system is in place, you can't stand in front of it. You can't, there's nothing that'll be able to stifle this kind of change, because it's not, being driven by a single individual. It's us doing it, So, and it's an amazing time to be alive. It's really difficult. It's probably the worst it's ever been, but it seems to be now like the more necessary time for change to happen.
It is. It's a very exciting transitional phase. Let's go back to when you talked about relieving the burden of immediate change, and looking at a health journey as something that it's a daily practice. It's something you're going to do for the rest of your life, and let's talk a little bit about your continuing recovery and how it's okay to be a work in progress, because I see quite a lot of people get an immediate relief from ditching conventional wisdom with regards to diet. They get this great, I feel so good, the brain fog's gone, and then a couple of years later, it's like an onion peeling, isn't it? You start to find different layers of your health story, different things come up, and it can be sort of quite disheartening, because you thought you'd nailed it and you thought you'd found the right way to do it. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. In my life, I look back at all the things, I didn't get to finish my story, I guess, about how I got better, but I got better. Spoiler alert.
Look at your beautiful skin now.
I should have cut my hair. It's getting too long. By eating a paleo diet, I lost over 30 kilos, and my skin issues went, and my mental fog went away. But I still deal with chronic pain in my body. I have joint pain from years of being obese. My energy levels aren't incredibly high, and I have to rest a lot in my life to just feel, 100%. And this is 1,000 times better than what I was 10 years ago. which is, to me, is so happy I'm here. And then I look back at my life and I go, wow, like I've published this cookbook with Jo and we've sold 18,000 plus copies of it. I've joined her business and now we reach 4 million visitors on our blog each year. We have 268,000 followers on Facebook, and I'm still dealing with this stuff. How could I be telling people about health while I'm dealing with these issues myself? Am I like a crook, telling people that they can be healthy by eating well, and I'm still dealing with chronic illnesses here? And my illness forces me to continue to research, to continue to read, to continue to look at the new science, to deepen my connection with my human nature, because I know there are unresolved issues and I'm excited to find out how I can fix them, because I know that on that journey I'll come out a better person at the other end. If all my illnesses just were like magically disappeared now, if you had told me, Fouad, your life again exactly as it is, but no sickness, from the age of 13, we'll remove that altogether and then see how your life would go, would you do it? And I would definitely not do it. I'll definitely go down the path of being sick and recovering from it, because by where my life was going, I was an IT manager at many financial institutions like banks and things like that, which now I despise them. I despise where my career was going. I look back at myself and I go, I had to go through this to know what the system looks like on the inside, so that when I'm on the outside, I can tell people, come here, come, this is where your refuge is, this is where your home really is, And if I hadn't gone through that kind of difficult forging of a new me through pain and illness, then I would have been unconscious for the rest of my life, most probably, because I would have had all these things that fed me, like the money and the prestige and the car and the house and all these things that I don't even care about now. But they were just little bits of like hits of a drug that kept me numb from really looking at who I am as a human being, and then finding in the most incredible answer I could find. The most incredible, is what I'm discovering day after day. So I'm telling people, if you're sick, fantastic. Back in the day, sick people were like, the shamans used to take them and apprentice them and tell them, you're going to be the healer of the village. They used to, that sickly little kid was prized by the entire community because they knew that person was going to develop empathy and they're going to be able to create change. And now, look, every person we meet is a candidate for shamanism because of this kind of sickness that we're dealing with. And I think we need more healers than anything on the planet at the moment. So what a better way to become a healer than to go through the sickness and apprentice under it yourself and come out the other end and make people better.
That's incredible. That's so inspiring for everybody that's tuned into this will have some issue. Everyone's on a health journey, and what a wonderful way to think of it, because it is so true. Because once you start to reclaim your health and you become like that shining beacon for others, you don't even have to go around and preach to others. People just start saying to you, oh my goodness, what have you done? I want to do what you're doing. You become like this little burning log on a fire, and you start to set other people on fire just with your vibrant energy and your the way that you're looking and feeling, and it's very contagious, like you've already said. And wow, it just makes me really excited about the future to think that if everyone can go through their own health journey, then they can ignite. It'll just be like this magic firework going off around the world. It'll just wow, that's really exciting. That's really exciting. And what I really like about that as well is that it really dissolves all of that like perfectionism. Like you're an amazing educator in this field and can really help a lot of people. But I love what you shared there about feeling like a crook, because perfectionism is just a myth, right? And I know quite a lot of people in this industry, they want to step up, they want to be more visible, they want to inspire more people, but they think they're not quite there yet. You know, like when I've lost.
Well,
my
again,
next
they're living to this
or,
ideal. You know, like I'm never gonna get a six pack, Helen. You know, I'm never gonna be that guy who looks buff or exactly. But I think we're stuck in the two paradigms. We want to be, re-empowered as human beings, but we also want the deprivation of what being on the cover of Men's Health makes you look like. So these two aren't actually, they're not congruent. They don't come hand in hand, especially not for someone who's, born sick or has gone through chronic illness. You shouldn't stress your body out in that way and deprive it and, push it to that extent. You should definitely look at nourishing and allowing recovery and looking after yourself like lovingly and not push yourself with all these things like that require you to meet that crazy ideal that you have of what you should look like before you can help people. My God, there are so many people who we can learn from who don't meet any health, standards at all. If you judge them by their cover, And some of the greatest teachers on the planet, you pass by them and you just wouldn't look twice. And this is, the superficial culture that we live in is that we even judge ourselves by the way we look, and we shouldn't do that. There's much more to us than this physical body. In fact, this is just a little part of who we are.
Just an illusion, some would say, but that's probably a little bit too esoteric for this conversation. So I'm going to change topics altogether now because I know a lot of people listening to this. I'd like to go down a little bit of the foodie entrepreneur, let's get some tips from someone who's really successful route. Because I love your story. It all seems very it's amazing how the infinite works. And you, like you say, you wouldn't change the way that your path has gone for anything because it's all, if you look back, it's all worked out so perfect. And it just seems so amazing how you're, one day you're in computers and then you decide you want to do food blogging and then the Sydney Morning Herald, just that local rag approaches you to be a reviewer for them. And then, you happen to co-author a book with Jo Whitten. Wow, tell us about Jo and how did you get to be pals with her and how did she get to share half her business with you?
Look, I've always taken action for things to take place. Even the Sydney Morning Herald, I put myself in the right place and I made myself visible to them. So it wasn't something that all of a sudden they picked me up. So this was, to me, I had a trust in my uniqueness. I knew that what I had to say was different, and I knew that it was my own self-expression, and that's what I've always looked for in my life, to be original and to be myself and to be moved by my inner world that says, look, there's all these doors, but this is the one you must walk down. And to be moved by that. And so many times in my life this has happened. And with Jo, she started her blog 2 years after I did, and she started following me. At the time, I was the more prolific blogger. I had a larger following.
Copied up you then, really?
No, not at all. She's her own woman. Yeah, she's her own woman, Jo.
You were doing it first.
Yeah. I started first. I was one of the first in Australia to start blogging.
Wow.
So there was only less than 10 of us at the time. So really, at least in the New South Wales region. And I was the first Middle Eastern food blogger that I know of in the world, in history. That's a crazy thing.
Yeah, wow.
So this is this is where I was, this is what made me be the first person there, or what made me approach the Herald and be certain that, what they had was a 100% Anglo-Saxon review team, 100%. And I put myself in front of Joanna Saville, the editor, and and I also sent her some links to my writing. And I said in my head, she's going to send me a message next week and ask me to review for the Good Food Guide. And I got that from her. And to her credit, like she's an incredible woman, and she was looking for that diversity and a different, authentic voice as well. And she picked a few of us from various ethnicities to join the team that year as well. So it was just the perfect time. With Jo, she started her blog in 2008, and she's a mom of 4, far north Queensland. She lives. She has a very different life to mine, but we became friends, we say, over our shared hatred for margarine. This is our common joke, because I used to get into these Twitter debates with nutritionists and dietitians who used to say, low fat, you should stay away from saturated fat, animal fat, that's going to kill you, you're going to get heart disease, you're going to die. And I was going, well, I definitely trust cows more than I trust chemists. That's, I think, Jane Goodall's famous statement. Yeah, and I was of the opinion that we should just be having the natural food. I used to get into all sorts of arguments with them, especially after I turned my health around. And Jo would she used to like my writing, and she liked my photography and things like that. And it inspired her to do her blog. It was an inspiration for her. I didn't know to what extent until later on, and we kept friends over the years. Then Jo exploded, just like her blog just went crazy. And as the stats I mentioned earlier are what she deals with now, because she started writing about allergy-friendly cooking with the Thermomix, and she resonated with all these people that were on this health journey and trying to do better for the families, mostly mothers with young children, trying to cook gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, that kind of stuff. And she created a huge following, and her first book has sold over 80,000 copies by now. And she's a superstar, Jo Whitten, like the loveliest person you'll ever meet, the most open, the most incredible. I can't even tell you, I can't speak highly enough of her. I'll tell you what happened with Jo is that I had started 2 restaurants. One was called Chickpea, and that went on for 9 months as a pop-up. And then I had another one for 6 months called Baraka. And they were pop-ups, me trying to experiment, bringing whole foods to the people that I lived amongst, and to be able to bring that understanding to them. And they were these beautiful restaurants, but I couldn't make them keep going. I couldn't keep going with them. It wasn't for me to stand behind, in the kitchen prepping all day and doing all that kind of stuff. I needed more cerebral work, and I need more creative output, and I needed to reach more people. And I felt that I was stifled in that restaurant environment, and I didn't know how to get out of it at all. So I closed down those restaurants and went back to my old career as a software engineer, and I hated it. I just hated my work, hated being back behind a laptop doing my programming and, KPIs and, this is, get here at this time and leave at that time and get the tie on, and I just didn't, it was not in tune with my expression. It was a lot of money. IT is a lot of money, but you just can't, it's the gilded cage. And I'm sitting there one day with Jo, and she's telling me about what's going on with her, and we're catching up. We talked on Facebook a lot. Her son Isaac had recovered from OCD and anxiety on the GAPS diet, and she was working on this online gut health program for GAPS, and she was really busy doing it. And but she was just like incredible businesswoman without even really trying to do real like modern day business or modern day entrepreneurship or this and MVPs and none of that stuff. She was just completely like doing her thing, just authentically. And I said, when are you going to do your next cookbook, Jo? Like, my God, you've sold at the time like 70,000 copies or something. When's the next one coming? And she's like, I don't know. Like, well, I just don't have time for it. And I said, Jo, come on, I'll leave my job and I'll come and work with you and we'll do this cookbook together. And she's like, really? Come on, let's do it. And I'm like, are you serious?
Incredible.
And I couldn't believe it. And my head was spinning and I was going, oh my God, like really? And now here I am, like in this office thinking about completely dropping all the security, all this thing that my work brings me, and like a certain career, a certain career, and to take this chance and go and write this cookbook with Jo. And I went and remembered, Joseph Campbell's words, which is, follow your bliss or do what scares you. They're interchangeable. They sort of go hand in hand, those two statements of his. And this is his advice for the flowering of a human life. If you want your life to flower, you do these things. And I look back and no decision for me to do this now. I look back at it and it was just more a direction that just was taken. I didn't even have to decide it. We just said, all right, well, this is what we're doing. And then Jo and I wrote this cookbook together. We didn't sign a single piece of paper. We didn't say whose intellectual property it was going to be. It was all done under her business. It was all done through her. Whenever I needed a bit of money, I said, Jo, give me some money so that I can pay bills and things like that. And just got through that year, got through it. And we went on the assumption that we're going to be partners, 50-50 in the book. But she's since then given me 50% of her business, just gave it to me, because we, see? Is that even like something that people do these days, or who does something like this?
Amazing. It's amazing.
And I can't believe it. I can't believe how open and giving she is, and she's been a great teacher for me to reevaluate my personal view of abundance and money and relationships and community and tribes and depending on people, because I'd always been the person who carried my entire weight on my own shoulders. I've always been the guy who just did my thing without really, allowing other people to help me, because I felt that I would be failed if other people helped me. And that was my experience, especially with medicine. So I had to sort of always be the person who solved my own problems. And since then, Jo and I, we are the best business partners. We just doesn't get any better. I wouldn't be able to tell you, if I were to imagine a better business partner, then she would have these qualities or he would have these qualities or anything like that. She's been amazing, and we work to our energies. So if today I'm feeling tired, I don't work. If we're not feeling creative, we don't try to create. We do other things. We prioritize family first. We are ethical to the people who work with us. We're very transparent to them. We pay them fairly. We don't ask for things from them for free. We don't ask them to work harder than they can. We ask them to prioritize their families. And we are most of my emails now, Jo and I laughed. I said, since I joined her, like I just instead of saying kind regards in my emails, I would type, like I go like much love or whatever it is, like feel like writing,
so non-corporate. And what does that mean anyway? Kind regards. It's like you can't come up with a nice thing to say, so you're just like, kind regards. Whereas really you could just say something like, have a wonderful day, love HQ. It's much nicer, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
And that's even to like people who sort of send us emails, they don't even know us. And we're like, we'd rather give them much love rather than kind regards.
It's so stuffy. It's so stuffy. The way that you guys do business, now, have you brought some of your like corporate-y IT strategy kind of thing to the business, or do you still do business Joe's way, I guess?
Well, I mean, I bring a masculine energy to the equation, which is definitely more focused to get a single task done rather than a multitasking kind of mentality. Like Jo will have 20 things that she wants to get done today, and I will have one thing that I want to get done today. And, so I try to bring her down from 20 to 3, and I say these are realistically the 3 that you're going to be able to achieve today, so let's try to work on that. In terms of the IT stuff, we try to prototype a few things before we commit to an entire, effort that we don't know whether it's going to work or not. So, for instance, with the online gut health program that we had, there was some teething issues with the programming, but nothing show-stopping. And Jo wanted to keep going and get it done, a few months from now. And I said, no, we can release now, and we can release it to a select number of people who will come on board, say, for a discounted price, and they'll be able to be. Yeah, that's right. And then, so I just give her that kind of direction in that. But our business is, our business is to feed people information and change their ways of thinking and to heal them. And we are out there to make the world a better place and to heal it. This is our business. This is everything else around that are just activities that are a natural expression of what it is that we do, and they happen to make money for us. And this is how, they just work, they make money. We wrote the cookbook, it makes money. We've done the online gut health program because we believe in it, and people join up, and people understand that these things, by supporting us, we don't charge a lot of money for these things. It's not like thousands of dollars. We charge a fair amount, which then goes in to sustain our lives to be able to continue to put this content out. And we've been we keep laughing about this because we're not rich from our business, but we get just enough money so that we're not lazy about it, so that we continue to say, it needs to be continued to be marketed. We need to continue to have strategy about doing all these things. But it seems to be just the way things need to happen so that the business continues to reach as many people as possible. Otherwise, you go, let's shut shop. We've, made our millions and we're going to go home now. Thank you very much. Or, I'm going to buy a little piece of Bali and go live there or something.
That's even if you had all the money in the world, you would continue to do what you're doing now, because this is what makes your life rich, and this is the message that you are here to deliver. This is the understanding that comes in. So it's really good that you said that, because idealistically, yes, that's totally understandable. But in the day-to-day, if you, for instance, are feeling just a little bit off, you just can go, I'm just going to take the day off, or you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think this, as the understanding and the solidifying for us in this path that we're taking, we're feeling every day we're more and more deeply rooted in our path. We feel anchored in it. We feel stable in it. We don't feel like, I now never think of going back to IT, whereas 6-7 months ago, that used to cross my mind, So these things are firming up, and with them firming up, we're just being able to understand that our path is to continue to do this for people for the rest of our lives. To continue to to bring this message for the rest of our lives. And it's kind of an exciting thing, because again, this is an old kind of program in us that people tell you you can just get rich and retire or something like that. And for us, we're being shown that our life can have so much more impact than if we just sat and did nothing. And we just enjoyed our own. So I never want to retire. Do you? I want to still be cranking out Facebook lives when I'm 95.
I hope so. I think So this idea of retiring, I think, is it someone retiring from a career, isn't it? Like
I think like from a bricks and mortar business, which you and I have, escaped. So that the bricks and mortar, the one that you were saying, where you get there at a certain time, you leave at a certain time, there's a certain amount of clothes that you have to wear. Whereas like now, the business that we're in, people can contact us 11 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the morning. There's none of that. It's very fluid, and you have to obviously set your own boundaries around that, so you're not continually being on email. But how if there's no like 9 to 5 Monday to Friday boundaries, there's definitely no retirement, is there? Unless you just decide that.
Well, that's the thing. And that's exactly to my what I was just saying. The word career before just doesn't apply anymore to my life. So before, I used to be this person who daydreamed about doing stuff while I was at work, and now I just work, because this is what I used to daydream about, and it's and I love it, and it's just this kind of confluence between all these different elements of my life that have brought me to this point, show me that my life is just this now. It's not like there's no conflict in it anymore, and the idea of retiring doesn't even apply to where I am, because stop being me, stop being. This, like, I can't fathom it. I can't see how it might even take place. So, but yeah, I'll definitely feel grateful for this. How can I put it? For this gradual introduction into this life. You know what I mean? Like this gradual ability to make that shift, because it's a very different life to me now that I live to the one I lived 2 years ago. And this kind of ease into it, just having each day my daily bread, gluten-free bread, and just being able to settle into this life and have it teach me what the expectations around my new path has been very different to me coming into here and going, all right, well, this is what I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to achieve these goals. This is what's going to happen. And this is not what happened for me. I've had to be led from what my life is doing to actually understand it, rather than come from a place of trying to overpower it and change it and divert it. So it's more a practice in understanding and flowing, rather than one of control and trajectories and strategies.
And, when we're children, we're taught a really good nursery rhyme, row, row, row your boat.
Yeah.
which is a brilliant analogy, isn't it? And it's true, right? Because you can't force the river. You've just got to go with the flow, and you don't know what's around the bend. And the reason we're laughing and I've gone red is because Fouad used that analogy in that last interview, the one that didn't record, but I have used it. I've been using it nearly every day. Yes, row, row, row your boat. Yes.
Yeah.
Very good ancient wisdom passed down in a nursery rhyme. I love it.
But it is though. Yeah. So like it says, row your boat gently down the stream merrily. Life is but a dream, and it is all that. And just don't think that you can control the stream and make it go uphill when it's already going downhill, and just you've got to go with it. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'm very pleased to hear that you're not going to be stopping doing what you do in the near future, because I can't get enough of what you and Jo are producing. And I love your book, Life Changing Foods. Love it so much. And I was just thinking, and it's not fixed, because but today I was thinking, oh wow, for lunch I'm having Jo's chili bowl, which I made for the first time on Friday night, which is just incredible. And I never thought to try that recipe, because everyone's got a chili recipe, right? Everyone has got one that they've done for years, but Jo's is just incredible, and it's half the amount of meat and half vegetables, which was just a lot easier to digest. It wasn't a big fat lump of meat on my gut, which was really good. Yeah. And for breakfast we had nut porridge, and there's just so many incredible recipes in there. Your pastry has absolutely transformed our lives. Even my gluten-free hating son loves it. So well done.
Well, let me show you. Hopefully, I've still got some. We're experimenting with doing a 10 recipe a free ebook with the dough recipe of mine, and so we're giving out 10 free recipes that you can do with that dough. And I just made these. They fell on make these ham and cheese buns.
Oh my god! They look like the ones you get at the supermarket. They're incredible. Oh, I wish I could have a bite.
So much better. It's so good. That's terrible. You don't want it. It's all mine.
I'm so hungry now. And then we got to have a good look around your house. So, and that was good. I was like looking around people's houses. It's turned into a food and home show now. Very exciting.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Come have a look.
Go and have a look. So tell us about what's coming up. How can we get to see you and Jo, and what's happening next?
Well, we're in Echuca in December and in Melbourne as well. The dates are on quirkycooking.com.au. You go to the events section. I'm there. You can see where we're going. Then we've got Brisbane in February. And Jo is actually, well, by the time this podcast comes out, probably Jo would have already done this. She's doing a Thermomix event tomorrow in Brisbane. But these are the 2 days that we've got. But then we've got a few places that we want to go around in the year. The best thing to do is to join our newsletter on quirkycooking.com.au, and you'll be able to see where we're going. Definitely, if you haven't connected with us already, follow us on Facebook, on the Quirky Cooking public page. But also we've got a private chat group, which is you have to request access to join. And we've got around 45,000 people on there. So it's a really great community where people come and ask questions, and you can post anything that if your child is sick with something and you want to know if other people have had that experience, what people think. That's a great place to do it. And definitely do the newsletter apart from that. And make sure that you join it soon, because you get that free ebook that I was mentioning with all these recipes.
That sounds gold. And I came to your event in Perth earlier in the year and saw you and Jo do some cooking, do a cooking class and talk to us about your stories and heaps of actionable tips. And it was brilliant. And you had enough time. I don't know how many people were in the room, but it was packed out. And it was $50 to go to, like so accessible. And we got loads of information, loads of inspiration. We got to hang out with a whole room of other like-minded people, which really, gives you that drive to move forward. And then you had time to talk to everybody individually and sign their book at the end, which is just amazing. It's so nice to actually, get your hands on the person that you're inspired by. So definitely recommend checking out those events at cooking.com.au. Very cool.
Yeah, thanks. We really feel that part is probably the most important part for us, apart from just being on stage. And if someone comes up to you and they want to talk to you,